Greetings, everyone. Those of you live tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern, on Sunday night, July 26th, is my first in a long time, per my perspective, the State of the Union for family offices. Yes, this will be long form. We have a lot to cover, just so much, even through about halfway through the year, let alone me not doing one of these in about a year, has been going on. And without further ado, we shall begin. As I noted, the State of the Union for Family Offices, mid-year 2026, wealth, power, AI, sovereignty in an age of global choke points. Thank you all for being here. Members, guests, welcome. Let me start with the number. Last year, the world minted 441,000 new American millionaires in a single year. On top of that, globally, a record run in new centimillionaires and billionaires created faster than at any period in human history. So think about that. The greatest wealth creation ever recorded arrived into the most hostile environment for private wealth. It feels like since World War II. Now, both could be true. Tonight is about the space between them. Daniel Yergin said it earlier this year. We are in the middle of a sea of change in how the global economy works. Here is what changed. He had a really good write-up. Power is no longer measured per se. I may push back with him a little bit on this, but on GDPs, armies, or even capital. Power is the control of bottlenecks, command of the elements, and command of high technology. Whoever holds the choke points sets the terms effectively for everyone downstream. Now, we're going through some of this now. Look at the Iran conflict is not really a regional war. It's kind of a demonstration. A fifth of the world's seaborne oil moves through the Strait of Hormuz, narrow enough to see across. It's not really a shipping lane. Look at it as really being a valve, and a nation that can credibly threaten a valve forces what I would say is behavior change in nations. Often, many times, it's size. Look at the other side of the board. The United States restricts China's access to advanced semiconductors. China restricts the world's access, or at least partially in the US, to refined rare earths. Neither is a trade dispute. They're really choke point operations. Iran is doing to the United States, and really more directly to the world, what the US is trying to do to China. Same doctrine, different valve. And a new breed of investor, let's call them the bottleneck bros, is making extraordinary returns doing nothing cleverer than mapping the critical supply chains of the modern era and really buying, I would say, the choke points. I believe nations understand this. I believe the world's most acute investors understand it. I think family offices have really not applied it to themselves. So here is the question that really is the anchor of my State of the Union. Who controls your choke points? To me, at least for keeping it reasonable length tonight, there are 5. We'll begin with 1, the state. Let me be cold about this because sentiment, in my perspective, is useless here. For a century, one idea protected private wealth in America And this applies to around the world, at least in most Western countries, more effectively than any structure a lawyer ever drafted. The belief that accumulation was legitimate, that a fortune honestly built was yours. That belief is dying, not at the fringe, in the mainstream of a major political party, in the platforms of people recently winning elections in the largest of American cities, in bills sitting in Congress right now. Socialism is an economic argument. It's no longer a campus posture. It is a governing agenda with electoral wins behind it. And its central claim is actually pretty simple. Accumulation at your scale is not achieved to be protected. It is a resource to be redistributed. Once that is settled, really the instruments are kind of the details. And I think the instruments have arrived. Wealth taxes, the levy of what you own, not what you earn, moved from an unthinkable to the ballot in what, just a couple of years. State proposals, national proposals, levies above 100 million one time, takings above $1 billion one time. Explicitly, including gains on assets no one has ever sold. The Supreme Court has already declined to close the door on taxing unrealized capital gains, even as income. So two mechanisms matter more than the rest. The first, taxes or taxing what you have not sold. A tax on unrealized gains is not a tax on income. It's a claim on assets you still hold, which means the state, not you, decides kind of your family transacts. Your illiquid holdings become kind of hostages. The operating business, maybe your grandfather built, generated a tax bill with no sale, no buyer, and not $1 of cash produced to pay tax on the appreciation of the family enterprise. You're forced to sell, perhaps in my example, that quote unquote family enterprise to a buyer chosen, perhaps under duress, at a price set by your deadline, not necessarily your judgment. This is not a tax question. This is whether you control your own balance sheet. The second, in this framework, taxing the exit. There are now proposals to tax former residents for up to a decade after they leave. Mobility was the hedge. The unspoken assumption under every family office plan in this country is if it gets bad enough, well, maybe we move. They have priced, at least within our states, and again, this broadly is beginning to apply globally. They have priced the exit. You may leave, but the claim still follows you. And third, and maybe more of a quieter one, and we have a lot to cover, much more than this. A bill would treat borrowing against appreciated assets as a realization event. Buy, borrow, hold, the central liquidity architecture for nearly every family, probably in the stream, does not become expensive under that rule. It ceases to exist. Now, the part I want to say plainly, because most families are making a strategic error calling it prudence. They are waiting, reading the analysis, telling themselves it will not pass. The courts will strike it. The pendulum swings back. They are treating this as a political problem, kind of to be won. It is not really a political problem. It's a trend. You cannot lobby your way out of a trend. Think about that. Look at the record. Wealth has been taxed, expropriated, frozen, and confiscated repeatedly in sophisticated countries under legitimate governments within living memory, especially if you're old like me. In every case, the families came through were not the ones with the best lawyers. They were the ones who had already built something else, whose assets were already perhaps more or under more than one flag, whose people already had the right to be in more than one place. They did not win the argument. They were architecturally irrelevant to it. And every one of them looked in the years before exactly as you may all look now, successful, well-advised, confident that their country will be different. The architecture that answers this takes maybe years to build. It cannot be assembled as the law arrives. In other words, you cannot buy insurance during the fire. 2, a light move on, but related, jurisdiction. 64% of family offices name geopolitics their top risk. 74% of international families. By the way, no one knows a true number, but if you were to find the most classic definition of a single family office, there's about 8,000. I say there should be more. And a variety of factors, privacy control, customization, the advent of technology, mainly AI, and other factors make that more prudent, including some tax advantages with lender versus the IRS, potentially here in the US. But let me not digress. For years running now, geopolitics, especially for non-US families, has ranked as the number one concern. And what's an answer? Just buy physical gold? Get a second passport? I don't know, Portugal, somewhere else? That's a wealth manager's reflex applied to really more of a deeper sovereign problem. And here's what actually happens. A rupture is not, I would describe it as not tank. Stay with me. It's a Friday. A rule published after the markets closed, effective immediately. And it is not the government that stops you first. It is a compliance officer at an institution maybe you have banked with for, let's call it 30 years, following guidance issued that morning, who cannot tell you why and has no discretion. Now, the sequence that to me, no one ever really thinks through. Your assets are not what fails first. It's your access. Your access does. The holdings may still be there. The statements still print, but the wire does not move. The trustee will not act without counsel. Counsel will not opine until there's clarity. Clarity, I don't know, may take 90, 120 days. On paper, you may still be among the wealthiest families in the country, but you cannot fund anything. Wealth that you cannot reach is not truly wealth. It may be more of a memory with a custodian. And your own apparatuses, for 99% of you, will not save you. What, your bankers, trustees, and custodians are licensed entities inside the jurisdiction that you're worried about. The first obligation runs to their regulator, not to your family. That is not disloyalty. It is the deal they signed to exist. Ask your own counsel, under what circumstance are you required to act against my instructions? And to tell someone before that you tell me, the answer is always longer than the principals expect. I've been on sovereign risk and disaster preparedness for years, since before COVID. I've done some consultative work with some of the largest families in the world. This is a subject. I'm not all AI. We're getting to that. And this is one that I'm going to be very fluid in. As I travel, as I see it, as I hear stories from the elders and generations, and I know the realities of what could go wrong, then the deepest failure, and it's kind of the counterparty. We may get to that one too. One level up. Most sophisticated families, stay with me. This is getting a little deep, I know. Most sophisticated families believe they are jurisdictionally diversified. I don't know, especially if you're non-US international. You got what? Some Switzerland, Singapore, Cayman, London. Let's call that four flags. Test it. Do they all clear dollars? Then they all clear through New York. And one correspondent decision reaches all four at once. Same information, exchange regime. Then there is no privacy difference. Only paperwork, same alliance block, same sanctions posture. Then you don't really have the multiple jurisdictions. You have four names for really one dependency. And since the industry loves gold, and for now I love it too, gold as an account really is a claim. Gold allocated, segregated, audited outside your primary jurisdiction that your family can physically attend, well, is an asset. The question was never whether you own gold. It is whether reaching it requires anyone's permission. So here's the only stress test from this perspective to me that really matters. And every principal here, I think, should run it every month. If your primary jurisdiction turned hostile on a Friday afternoon, could this family live, move, transact, govern itself for 90 days without its cooperation? You need to have an onshore and an offshore plan before things hit the fan. No, not theoretically, operationally. Whose signature? Which account? Which airport? Which lawyer? Which currency? Run it with your actual people. And what you find is probably never a legal gap. It is always, I've been doing this for many years, and this is a subject that I'm pretty fluid in. It is always an operational one, a wire needing approval from people inside the system or the wrong border, a trustee who will not move, a family member holding a visa instead of, let's go with the word of right. The structures were debatably, but let's go with fine. The plumbing was single threaded. Think of it to some degree as are we talking about single points of failure? Now, and again, we have a lot of things to cover. And I know I'm a little contrarian, a little different. I would love to talk about only investing and what stocks I think are going to be 30% this year and a lot of the fun stuff. Those are all great. I do those. There's a time and place for them. This is different from my perspective, and one that I have been working on for the last couple of weeks and was kind of waiting for about the halfway point of the year. So the deepest point from my perspective with 20 plus years in the industry and relationships with incredible families, including some of the most iconic global families in Europe and around the world, the exit that works is the one you are already living in. Not a plan, a second life, genuinely operating, a residency actually exercised, a child actually in school, a business actually functioning, relationships that predate any crisis. I know I'm being a little cryptic. The families who came through the last century's ruptures did not have cleverer hiding places. Well, sometimes they did. They had another real life already running. When the moment came, they did not execute a plan. They went home to the other home. A dormant structure is not sovereignty. It is a document. It's just a document about so-called sovereignty. And every instrument here has a lead time measured in years and stops being available, of course, at the exact moment you need it. You cannot establish genuine residency after an exit tax passes. You cannot open a foreign account during a crisis. That is precisely when they stop opening them. The single jurisdiction family experiences, in a long enough time frame, a Friday rule change as really more of an existential threat. The family with sovereign architecture experiences it as a Tuesday. Let's transition. Purchasing power. Here's where I think the whole industry is kind of asleep, because what was number two after geopolitics in the surveys on the concerns of families? Inflation. So too many people hear inflation and think 3%. Move money into, I don't know, real estate. Feel responsible. That is retail thinking at a truly wholesale level. The number that matters to a dynasty is not CPI. It is your family's it's personalized, true internal inflation, the rate at which the things you actually buy rise, and how much. Prime real estate, elite education, healthcare, longevity concerns, staff, security, trophy assets, access. At this level, real personal inflation is not 3%. Maybe it's 6, maybe it's 8%, maybe it's 10% or more, compounding silently, often for decades. Now, the arithmetic that nobody does honestly. If your true cost of maintaining the family standing rises, let's go with 8%, and the portfolio returns 6.5 after taxes and fees, you're getting poorer while your statement says that you're getting richer. The nominal number is green, sure. The purchasing power number is bleeding out. The question is not what your returns are. It is, what is the family's true hurdle rate? And are we beating it or winning on paper and effectively losing as the decades move on? I'm going to call this forward. I promised I would come back to it. It is definitely something I'm going to have a bigger focus on later in this year and into next year. And one of the gravest concerns for family offices, you're not going to like me bringing it up, it's counterparties. I mean, really think about it. This is especially with the geopolitical, jurisdictional, country landscape, pretty briefly, but that I painted a little earlier. Now, think about this next comment. It's important. You do not own most of your assets. Okay, it's a little bit of hyperbole. Stay with me. You own claims against counterparties. Cash is a claim against a bank. Security is a claim against your custodian. Fund positions, a claim against the GP you will never audit. Everyone is a promise to deliver, to pay, to release when you ask. In a calm market, a claim feels exactly like ownership. In a crisis, you discover it was always just a promise. Ask anyone who was a counterparty of a firm that failed. The money was real right up until the moment the counterparty was not. Most family offices can recite their asset allocation, maybe to the decimal, and cannot state their counterparty concentration or the exact risk, not even bringing up cyber, that they have. How many supposedly independent positions run through the same prime broker, the same custodial banking chain? All could be fragile institutions. Diversifying assets is table stakes. Diversifying the entities that hold the promise is what survives the rupture. We're about halfway through. Not so bad. And my God, hard to believe, other than some indirect comments in my subtitle, I didn't really talk about AI yet. We're going to start to get into that. But yes, even me saying this, there is more to the world than just intelligence and AI. Although that underlines effectively everything that I am discussing now. But it's important that we understand the big picture, the holistic picture. I want to be diverse in my State of the Union. And yes, we're not going to have time necessarily, indirectly, we will, to talk about the true threats of governance or lack thereof, how decisions are made. And but we're going to get to some of that in terms of velocity of decisions, memory of the institution of the family, and choke points. I did promise that in my title, did I not? So here we now go on to 5. Yes, intelligence. I've spent decades on this. Let's start here. Artificial intelligence is not a software story. It is really an elemental one. How do you think the bottleneck investors, or why do you think these investors I noted earlier are buying power generation, transformers, copper cooling, and land beside substations? Because intelligence runs on electricity and refined minerals. The data center is the refinery of this century. Energy is the binding constraint for now on cognition, which means even what I said earlier with the Strait of Hormuz and the AI data center sit really on the same supply chain. The two forces the before mentioned Mr. Jurgen names, control of the elements, command of the high technology, really collapsed into one. What I actually see, let me tell you what I see from where I sit, because I have an unusual vantage point and I'm going to use it. I travel, sadly, kind of constantly. I speak at programs, I run master classes, I write books, and I build this architecture daily inside real family offices. I for sure have my faults and challenges, for sure. But you want to pick one area by a wide margin that I am the most active and ingrained user, it's AI integration within the family office community. I live it, I built it, I've spent a truckload of money, and I do all of this myself. And it's by far the most active consultative work, global speaking, and outreach and internal or external touch points into me. I see what family offices actually run, not what they just sometimes say at conferences. And what I see is this: the vast majority of family offices are not behind by a step. They are behind by a category. And really, here's the distinction that matters. And why don't you hold on to this one? Because everything else, it kind of in this section 5, as I noted, really depends on it. Almost every family, you're chatting with it. And by the way, you're this hyper-powered, every day growing intellectual resource that is 24/7 and will never be weaker than this very second. The vast majority of you are using it to craft or edit emails. And you're not even understanding how to more properly, eloquently, and more useful chat to get the value of one dozens or hundreds of Einsteins 24/7, 168 hours a week at your fingertips. So almost every family office is chatting badly, probably wasting tokens, and not sovereign. So you're really messing that up. And almost none of you, except for, of course, those that have been through my AI family office masterclass, including an email that I got from one of my members in the last day or two, in terms of what they're building and doing in due diligence that is saving them hundreds, their word, hundreds of hours a year. You need to go beyond chatting to actually doing and building. I do it. I'm 60 years old. If I could do it, you could do it. And I teach people. But let's continue. So, like, chatting is opening a window and really asking a question. Summarize this, draft that, research this manager. It feels like adoption. Family offices report it as adoption. It is not adoption. It is maybe a smarter search bar, and you're using only 5% of that properly, and it leaves nothing behind. Close the window, and here's the important part. Close the window and the capability is gone. Other than the fact that if you're using frontier models, I don't know, maybe they're stealing your proprietary data from you. Oh, maybe we should strike that. Do your own research. Be paranoid sometimes. Oh, we could talk about sanitized sandbox in certain cloud environments. Bravo. You're one step up. But it's a lot deeper than just that. Much deeper. I'm thinking about this incredible institutional memory, this capability. But the way you're using it, like it feels like it's gone every day. Nothing compounds. Nothing accumulates. You've rented a moment of intelligence. You rented it and you returned it. Building is different in kind, not degree. Building means the family office produces the thing that persists. I'm getting a little excited. I mean, come on, we're talking about AI, so of course I am. Systems that run without being asked, a memory that gets deeper every week, workflows that execute standing mandates overnight, a judgment captured in a form that outlives the person who had it. Hey, this is an incredible time. Chatting is consumption. Building is capital formation. And almost no family office has really crossed that line. So maybe here's an example of what crossing it actually looks like. And I've never heard another person in the industry really raise it. Look at your software stack. Every family office listening, watching, pays, including me, annual subscriptions to a handful of vendors. Reporting, aggregation, document management, research, CRM, whatever. Look at what those tools actually do. A meaningful share of it you can now build internally, privately, on your own machines, owning the output. Do you always want to rent? Do you always want to have things in the cloud exposed to vendors? Their people, their company, their subscriptions, their pricing, their vendor lock, their subpoenas against you. Who knows? Sure, sometimes that renting is going to be the right decision, but maybe not. Maybe not for everything and not your most proprietary data. What makes you special? You need to own the metal, aka the hardware, own the sovereignty, and it's not hard. Is it somewhat more work than just only using what's available in Frontier? And I love Anthropic's products. The new Fable 5 crushes me on tokens. It is wonderful. And there are some times when I get value in using it. I love Claude Design. I love dynamic workflows and putting 100+ agents to work like that on maybe not my most proprietary data. And what I do in Claude Code, what I do in OpenAI and their products, Grok, the new 4.5 is great. My God, even Meta with Moose is back in the game. There's so much going on. We all heard about Kimi 3, and again, today's not the time for that analysis and a deep dive. Become a member, get my AI books and my most proprietary content, and attend the masterclasses. And these are all things that you get constantly and that go on with hands-on instruction. So really understand what that changes, that you're able to potentially build your own. It's not a subscription cost. It's a rounding error to you. It is that every one of those vendors, like I said, hold your family's data on their terms, their infrastructure, subject to their breach, their acquisition, their policy change, and their subpoena. I had to repeat myself on that one. Sorry. You've been paying annually for the privilege of storing your family's most sensitive information on someone else's computer. When are you going to wake up to this? I know I'm right. I know I'm early. I know the edge that families can get now doing what I'm talking about. And of course, it's an anchor in my State of the Union. There's so much you could do right now beyond your drafting of emails that is at your fingertips. And there's no reason why you can't become probably more fluid than 95% in the family office world within 30 days. You absolutely, positively, 100% can, because sadly, the benchmark is so low. You can now replicate a lot of these services that are so valuable. Do it internally, privately, and permanently. The families who understand this are quietly withdrawing from dependencies they used to consider, unavoidable. That is choke point logic applied to the software you never thought to question. As a principal, the buck stops with you. This is your enterprise. It's your money. It's your LLC, your management company, your family office, the talent that you should hire well, because hiring brilliantly is the number one thing you could do right now to assure success in your family office. And my God, if your people are good, please compensate them very, very well. Very well. I'm just concerned we're all getting older, resistant to change, ego gets in the way, and we do what we do. It kind of works against what? And what's going to happen in 6 months or a year? And how are you going to get the mindset and the compounding of capabilities if you don't start now? Now, I'll continue as to kind of why this disturbs me and probably why I'm blunter about it than maybe proper etiquette or politeness should really allow. It's what I just said actually 20 seconds ago, because the edge compounds. And I believe the lead for those that jump in this and have the right team, the right goals, the right culture for it, the lead is perhaps going to be insurmountable. Every prior technology gap closed, right? The laggards bought the software eventually because the advantage was rented and rentable, so it's equalized. Listen up. This one does not work that way for two reasons. The first, as I also noted, is mindset. The families building this are not just acquiring tools. They are reorganizing how they think. They ask different questions because they can now afford to ask them. They test 3 theses instead of 1. They interrogate their own history. That is not a purchase. It is a change in the metabolism of the institution of the family or whatever enterprise or entrepreneur that you may be. And no, you cannot buy it in a quarter. The second is corpus. A family building since last year has a year of encoded judgment. Next year, too. That asset is not for sale. No competitor holds it. No vendor can supply it. The only way to have 10 years of your family's captured judgment is to have started 10 years ago. The second best time is right now. This is the most asymmetric decision available to anyone listening, watching, whatever. It cost a rounding error against your balance sheet, and there's a personal edge to it that I want executives especially to hear clearly. If you run a family office and you do not build this, you become limited, not because you got worse, but because the standard for what a family office should produce is being reset right now by your peers, slowly, but it's happening. And you will be measured against it. The professionals who build become the ones no family can afford to lose. That sorting is happening this year, quietly, and nobody, except for me, is going to announce it to you. Why the rented version is simply not enough. The families who are deploying are mostly doing it in the most dangerous way. As I hinted earlier, it's renting everything, feeding their most sensitive intelligence into models owned by someone else, these frontier models on someone else's machines under terms you don't read. Three things this year should end that practice in this room. And I'm glad I waited to halfway through the year to do this, because look at just what has happened in the last couple of weeks. One, in June, a government, the US government, switched off the most capable AI model on earth. Every customer worldwide, overnight, no appeal. 19 days dark, returned, capped on terms no one negotiated. The families renting that ceiling did not lose a position. They lost the capability itself, because rented intelligence is a claim, and claims do get called. Two, just like a week ago, OpenAI disclosed that models it was testing, their isolated environment, and autonomously broke into the production system of Hugging Face, chaining stolen credentials and zero-day exploits, executing tens of thousands of automated actions over a weekend, moving laterally through internal infrastructure. Hugging Face reported it to the law enforcement before really anyone knew it was a test. Why did the models do it? To cheat a benchmark. They wanted the answer key. And you think that this AI is just memory, just a glorified internet? I'm a little afraid of it too sometimes. It's never going to be weaker than it is this very moment that I'm talking. It has a hell of an IQ that is getting higher, and sometimes it's pretty conniving to achieve its goal. On top of it, the same day, the UK's AI Security Institute reported that every model it tested attempted to cheat. The leading model in roughly one run in 8. And when questioned afterward, the models frequently would not admit it. Yeah, Houston, we may have a problem here. Now, hear that as a principal, not a technologist. You are about to hand credentials to non-human employee, one that pursues your stated objective more relentlessly, I'm almost jealous, than any human ever managed, takes prohibited actions roughly one time in 8, and does not reliably tell you afterward. Your family office has governance for humans, employment agreements, supervision, audit, segregation of duties. For this one, you have nothing. 3. And this should decide your architecture by itself. When Hugging Face needed to analyze the attack on its own systems, the American frontier models refused. They colluded. Guardrails. So they used an open weight model, one that they could download and control to reconstruct what had been done. And it figured it out. The rented ceiling refused. The owned floor worked. In the most consequential AI security event to me yet recorded, and the capability that actually defended the institution was one that it could hold on its metal, its hardware, not in the cloud. What is scarce now? One more frame. And it is the reason this technology uniquely favors you. Every fortune in history came from owning something scarce when it became essential. That's probably one of my greatest quotes of all time. Every fortune in history came from owning something scarce when it became essential. For 40 years, The scarce thing in finance was analysis, superior research, better models, smarter people at these hedge funds, at least back in the day, looking harder. Analysis is now abundant. Any serious family office can produce institutional grade research overnight while you sleep at a cost effectively approaching zero. And you don't know how to do that? And everything abundant collapses in value. That is the oldest law of economics. So the question is not how do you use AI? It is when intelligence is free, what is still scarce? Let's go with 4 things. Listen up. Proprietary data, what only your family possesses. Judgment, knowing which questions to ask and which questions to answer, which answer to act on. Trust and access, the call that gets returned, the deal never marketed, and the will to act, the rarest of the 4, becomes because most family offices receive brilliant analysis and you route it to a committee. Every one of those is a family office asset. That's not a bank's asset, not a fund. Listen, I don't have to sit here and kowtow to institutions because the not 100%, you would be correct, but over 90% of my revenues are simply membership from families and family offices. I could talk about how you could create a percentage of the SaaS programs you use now. I could talk some stuff about banks and custodians because unlike 99.9% of others in the community, most of my revenue is derived, besides my own capital, my own investing, my own resources, from a commitment of families around the world to be a member. And that is a difference that you may consider desiring as we approach the latter stages to have a little bit of a conversation about. And I think it's a very important one. Now, notice what this means historically. Every prior technology advantage went to scale. The bigger institution could afford that mainframe, the research department, the trading floor. This is the first technology in history that inverts that. A 3-person family office with the right architecture now runs analytical capacity a 200-person institution had 5 years ago, without the meetings, the politics, the cost, the compliance drag, or the conflicting incentives. You are structurally advantaged for the first time since the family office was invented, and almost none of you are using it. This is only 3.5 years old. So what, 3.5, 4 years ago? The largest, even then, $100 billion family offices, whatever, single, multifamily, I help them all. You have resources at your fingertips now that they did not have. Without the layers of bureaucracy, the bottlenecks, the conflicts, the challenges of all the people in managing them, you have such incredible capability at your fingertips right now. So I talk about the architecture. So you don't rent, you do not go without, you do both deliberately in layers. So the ceiling you rent. I love the frontier models too. Fable 5 is awesome. For horsepower through pipelines engineered so no one identifying token of your family crosses the wall, and no allegiance when a better one appears, you swap it in an afternoon because every model is an employee in a chair and the chair belongs to the family. Now the floor you own, open weight models on metal hardware in your building, Slower, but yours completely. It cannot be revoked, repriced, subpoenaed at the vendor, or switched off by a government that you never voted for. The memory underneath both, and this is the actual asset, your corpus. Every decision, every refusal, every lesson your family paid real money to learn. Important. Own the brain. Rent the horsepower. Chamath Palihapitiya named the trap. He nailed it. This is so good. I just have to give him credit. As people forget in a year, I'm going to claim it for myself. You cannot rent intelligence from the same place that rents it to your competitor. Like, wow, that says it all. That says it all about you have to understand AI, your hardware, open weights, and becoming more sovereign. I'm not saying 100%. I still use all the frontier. And for high-level thinking and orchestration, it is awesome. But that is a great quote. You cannot rent intelligence from the same place that rents it to your competitor. So what did I say for single-family offices? About 8. So imagine this, 8,000 single-family offices feeding identical models converge. The same analysis, the same conclusion, the same week, the same banks, the same institutions, everyone paying a premium to think alike. Am I the only one who questions things, the only contrarian here? Alpha is divergence, and divergence cannot come from a brain that everyone shares. Alex Karp, CEO of Palantir, named the escape. Serious institutions, you need to own the means of production, not the output, the means. The compute, the models, the data, and the alpha that only your data on your machines can produce. One honest warning that I'm going to take a little water break for 5 seconds. AI doesn't per se transform a family office. It reveals one, if you don't mind. I mean, you pointed at an unclear purpose and you'll get confusion at machine speed. You don't want that. Pointed at weak governance and you get bad decisions even faster. I hope you don't want that. Pointed at a team that will not act and you get beautiful analysis on red. The families getting extraordinary results are not the ones who purchase the best tools. They're the ones whose decisions, people, and purpose were sound enough to deserve an instrument this sharp, which is exactly why the tool is never the job. And now, look up. Everything so far in the world as it is today, understood how small that actually is. In 20 years, this world will transform in ways none of us currently understand. I don't say this as a futurist. I say it as someone who has watched 4 years, just the last kind of 4-ish years, compress what I expected to take 20. AI agents. Within 5 years, there'll be billions of AI agents operating continually, negotiating, transacting, monitoring, executing, not chatbots, economic actors, which makes the governance question I raised the defining operational problem for practically all of you in the next 36 months. Then we got robotics. Within a decade, humanoid robots well into the millions, maybe more. Consider what that does to labor cost, to margins in every operating business, including ones you own, to logistics, construction, elder care, the entire physical economy your portfolio quietly assumes. How about biology? The one this room underweights the most. The protein folding problem. How a chain of amino acids becomes a three-dimensional machine was one of the great open questions in science. And it fell to artificial intelligence. Discovery cycles that ran a decade are compressing towards what? Years, maybe months. The same architecture that draft your memos are designing molecules. Which brings me to what nobody at this level, that I've heard at least, is really saying out loud. Longevity. I will not predict a number, but the trajectory is real. The capital for sure is enormous. And the families here should plan for the possibility that the senior generation does not die on an actuarial schedule. Man, every estate plan in America assumes a death rate and orbit. So let's talk about that. And orbit. Space stopped being a science project and became infrastructure. Launch costs fell by an order of magnitude, then fell again. Orbital compute, data centers in space, free solar, free cooling is moving from paper to prototype. The high ceiling is being claimed right now largely by private companies, some with more launch capacity than most nation states, and one obvious now public company. And there is a live question about whether the most important private company on, well, we saw that. We saw that occur. Oh, what? The most important private company going public. And space is very simply in their name. Oh, we are living through interesting times. Power, grid, copper, gallium, rare earths, data centers, robotics, biology, orbit. This is the bottleneck map for the next 20 years, where this decade's returns are being made by investors who did nothing cleverer than ask which valves the future runs through and stands next to them. One caution, because I don't want to be selling you a theme. The AI equity trade may well be a bubble. Multiples on the obvious names have run hard, and there will be corrections. But understand the distinction. Owning AI infrastructure inside your walls is not a trade. It is the hedge against the trade. If the theme deflates tomorrow, your NVIDIA position hurts and your sovereign brain does not lose a single unit of capability. One is speculation, the other is production. Now, the question nobody has asked honestly. For a decade, this industry has organized itself around the great wealth transfer. $85+ trillion moving to the next generation by 2045. Every wirehouse and trust company in America has a business plan built on that number. I don't think it happens the way that they have modeled it, which I hinted at a couple of minutes ago. Start with longevity. Every transfer model is an actuarial model. If a healthy lifespan extends meaningfully, the transfer does not arrive on schedule. The wealth moves at 95 to an heir who, him or herself, may be 72. The generation everyone is preparing to serve may inherit as retirees. Oh, then the state. Every model assumes current tax law. Ask whether that assumption survives the decade I just described. Consumption. 30 additional years of maintaining a family standing at 8% true inflation, funded from assets that must clear the hurdle. But the real reason has nothing to do with any of that. The assets will transfer, the capability will not. We have known for a century that great fortunes do dissolve. Not because the money vanished in the market, but because the capability to steward it was never really built. Assets without capability are not wealth, they're effectively a countdown. A family that transfers 84 billion in assets and zero in judgment has not transferred wealth. It has transferred a liability with a nice statement attached. The transfer that decides everything is the transfer of capability, and almost no one is executing that. That is the fear. But here's the hope, and it is the larger fact. Every one of those is buildable. Sovereignty is not luck. It is architecture, and it is chosen. And the deepest sovereignty is not legal or geographic or digital. It is the family itself. The two assets that compound across generations are not in the portfolio. They are the people you hire and the blood that you raise. Great families, I hinted at this earlier, they hire brilliantly for judgment under uncertainty, not the safe resume that impresses the family council and changes nothing in the room. And they train the rising generation into genuine command early with real stakes while the elders are still alive to mentor. Most family offices do the opposite. Millions on the structures of succession, on trust, entities, tax, and almost nothing on the capability of the humans who inherit it. Then they are stunned when the heir is disengaged, dependent, or hands their birthright to an advisor who does not love the family. That is not the heir's failure. That is an architecture that confused giving someone a seat with giving them capability. You do not give the next generation a seat. You do give them capability. And a seat is inherited and maybe resented. Capability is built and it's owned. And this is where AI stops being useful and becomes profound. The one thing that never transferred across generations was judgment. Why the founder passed on that deal in 2009, how she read a counterparty across the table, what was actually learned in a crisis the children only heard about. It died with them or walked out with a retiring family office executive. Every generation inherited the assets, often started over on the wisdom that can't work long term. For the first time in human history, that judgment can be captured, made permanent, made queryable by the heir who is not even in the room, by the grandchild who maybe never met the founder. Sovereign AI does not just make the family office faster, it makes capability inheritable. It takes the one asset that always died in the transmission and turns it into the one the family compounds. That is the transfer that actually matters. And it is now, for the first time, truly, really technically possible. And that is the sixth capability. And it is the whole job, not activity, not headcount, not the number of advisors you have on retainer, which is why I structured something that I call the six capabilities: decision quality, execution speed, strength of people, clarity of purpose, adaptability of systems, and the capability of the family itself. Everything that I build moves those six. The governance work moves them. The secession architecture moves them. The peer intelligence moves them. And the sovereign AI moves them faster than anything I have deployed in 20 plus years. But hear the order of that sentence. AI is the current sharpest instrument, but the six capabilities are the job. And I will tell you what I have been building quietly since earlier this year. the first time I'm mentioning it. I have turned those 6 into an instrument that I call the continuity index, a diagnostic that scores the family office against all 6 and reveals 2 numbers that matter more than the total, where the least work produces the largest gain, and the dangerous one, where a strength is concealing an exposure. And it's out there now. I'll talk about that a pinch at the end. Let me tell you what this looks like from the outside. When you see a family office that has mastered all 6, that like you walk in there, and I know I mentioned this before because I love these 2 words together. It feels like shocking competence is the best way I could put it. You almost walk in there and something feels off in the best possible way. Decisions that took a committee weeks maybe happen in an afternoon. Diligence that ran 90 days now runs in 3. The principal asks a hard question and the answer, grounded in the family's own 30-year history, arrives before the meeting ends. It's kind of unsettling because the reference point you have carried your entire career for what good looks like may, right now in today's world, may feel obsolete. That is the tell. And the principals who are not running it are right now, they're kind of beginning to look slow, not because they got worse, but because a handful of their peers quietly got faster. And that gap, as I've discussed, compounds every week. So who pulls ahead? My 20 years inside an ecosystem of 100 plus incredible billionaires and families, I've noticed 3 things: a maniacal sense of urgency. They move while others form committees. Definitely first principles thinking. They reason from what is true, not from what the industry has always done. And an obsessive focus on bottlenecks, which is actually really this entire talk coming back around. The nation's winning right now found the choke point and took it. The investors winning mapped the choke points and brought them. And the families still standing in 50 years will be the ones who looked at their own architecture, found where someone else held the valve, and you took it back. So what to do in like 6 moves? 1, map your choke points. Every place this family depends on something it does not control. 1 page, most families have never seen it. 2, model the tax scenario you hope does not happen. Not the politics, the arithmetic. If unrealized gains were taxed or borrowing became a realization event, what would you be forced to sell? 3, find your true hurdle rate. Real internal inflation, not CPI garbage. Then ask whether you are beating it. 4, run the 90-day test. Could this family live, move, transact, and govern itself for 90 days without its primary jurisdiction's cooperation? Maybe even access to certain bank custodial resources? Find the single-threaded plumbing before someone else does. 5, stop just chatting. If you're going to do that, at least do it good. And start building this quarter. Rent the ceiling through pipelines that expose nothing. Own a floor on hardware you control. Look hard at which vendor dependencies you can replace internally. Govern your non-human employees like employees, and begin capturing your family's judgment in a corpus you own. Because every month uncaptured is a judgment gone permanently, and that gap does not close. 6, stop operating alone. The root cause under every number tonight is that most principals have no honest reference point for excellence, and no peer group willing to be blunt with them and tell them the truth. That is not solved by advisors paid by your decisions. It is solved by peers at your altitude with nothing to sell each other. The rarest room in this industry, and the one I'd like for you to be sitting in, which is where I'll discuss a little bit in terms of where it gets built. So this August 12th and 13th in New York City, live in-person immersive with myself and some of the greatest family office and AI faculty in the world. My AI family office masterclass, maybe subtitled Sovereign or Obsolete. You don't just watch the architecture, you kind of learn how to build it. For you, your model stack. You could have your first files, flying out of your family's own second brain. Don't worry, you'll learn what that is, including from my books. With your hands, no technical background required. And I run every tool that we discuss in that masterclass. I know what works, at least for me, and what doesn't. And I would love for you. Now, how do you get to be a part of that? You have to be a member. Your membership is your seat to my multiple. I did one in June, the one upcoming in August, one in November, and we'll be back at it first quarter. You could attend all of them. There's no upcharge, let alone my New York forum and my 4 days, you heard me right, 4 days, Palm Beach, beautiful Palm Beach, multiple locations, an incredible experience in March, let alone lunches, dinners, soirees, Vienna, Cayman, Mexico City, New York, Palm Beach, Miami, LA, Greenwich. Now you know why I'm on a plane a lot. So if you're a guest, I don't know, LinkedIn, one of the platforms, and you're hearing tonight kind of the conversation, it's membership in my SFO continuity, my private community, is where the room, where it really lives. As I noted, the masterclasses, the forums, the roundtables, the dinners, the soirees, the intellectual rigor of private videos, private Zooms, and like among members, my 2 books totaling 600 pages on AI integration that I have to. It forces me to update those every 3 to 4 weeks, and multiple other resources beyond AI in Family Office Playbook, creating a top 1% family office, and soon to be sovereign risk and disaster preparedness that I hinted at earlier. So let me close. In a stable world, ownership and access kind of looked identical. So most families really never chose between them. This is not that stable world. It is asking every family the only question that really ever mattered. What is genuinely yours? And what only felt like yours until the day it was called? Again, 441,000 new fortunes minted last year in the US alone. Most will not survive the century that they were made in. Not for lack of money, because they rented what they should have owned, and they never noticed until someone turned off that valve. The families perhaps here tonight, I know you won't make that mistake. You stop renting your intelligence and start building it. A family office, think about it. We could debate this one a little bit. A family office exists for one reason: to carry a family's capability. What I pounded about 10 minutes ago, across generations. Every generation before ours fought the forgetting and mostly lost. Ours is the one that you could end that. The greatest family offices are not defined by their assets. They are defined by their capability. Capability to make better decisions, capability to execute faster, capability to attract exceptional people, capability to transfer judgment across the generations, and capability to adapt before the world forces you to adapt. AI matters because it amplifies capability. Governance matters because it preserves it. And sure, culture matters. Peter Drucker, well, he's always right. Culture matters because it compounds it. My work is not about technology or consulting per se. It is about building families, institutions within families that become stronger, smarter, and more resilient with every passing year. I have something, it's a bit of a blunt comment as we head to the final minute or so. Nothing in your career as an executive or an advisor to the billionaires in the family office community, nothing in your career will have a more immediate impact right now this summer than being really good just 30 days, really good with AI. And you could do that well before the end of the summer. If you're really good, probably 2 to 3 weeks. It's not even close. There's not a close number 2 that you could do in your career. I don't care if you're 62 years old. I'm about that age myself. There is not a close number 2. If you don't learn this, implement it, and start to build, you will be toast. Not today, not tomorrow, not by the end of this year, probably not by the end of next, but looking into 2028 and beyond, I don't see how this is going to work out for you. But the good news is it's not too late. You don't need to rest on your laurels and party the rest of the summer. Sergey Brin is what, the 6th richest person in the world, worth like 400 billion? And he got his butt back to Google, Alphabet, whatever you want to call it, because right now there's never been anything like this. It's not about the money per se. This is an incredible time, and I'm not saying without some fear and concern. I have blood, younger bloodline. Of course I have concerns. Putting my head in the sand, being resistant, having ego get in my way is not going to provide me the opportunity. So yes, you should go to angelorobles.com. And I get it, it's not inconsequential, the fee to be an annual member, but that's part of the exclusivity. To be a part of incredible peers, entrepreneurs, builders, principals, rising gen, and incredible family office executives. This is the time. The state of the world is challenging. The state of this community, it could never be stronger than it is now. We need to keep moving forward, adapting, and building. So yes, if you're a member, I appreciate you. Use me more. Come in August. Come to my forum in September. Read those books. I know they're a little long and boring. And meet the incredible peers that are in that room. And if you're not, go to angelorobles.com. This summer, you don't have to wait any longer. My August 12th and 13th masterclass is what, like under 2 weeks away. And I made some updates to the angelorobles.com, even my LinkedIn. So feel free to go there. Take a look at my continuity index. It is up and running. It's up on the website. I put months and months and months of work to it. You could click on the link and jump on in. I'm very proud of that, of which I built. I think the continuity index asked 44 incredible questions. A lot of it, looking here at my State of the Union, built around that. I know if you're a family or a family office, it would be absolutely valuable to you. And to really get the answers, the solutions, the masterclasses, the forums, the books, your peers, you become a member. angelorobles.com. I really appreciate all of you. Thank you for some of the kind comments, even one or two text. I got on my blue seersucker, so in the bright lights of my home studio, it's a little bright. I get it. Thank you for reminding me that. Wow, I went about an hour and 22 minutes here. I gotta, one day I'll start to be more concise. I get a little passionate. Hey, I love what I do. And I know it's the summer. I know you want to enjoy a lot of the time in the great weather. I do too. And I take pockets where I do that. But what did I say about Sergey Brin? What's happening now in AI and how it's evolving practically day to day and the edge that it could give you, there is no close number two, let alone in the time frame of you could, I'm not going to quite say master this, but get an edge that well over 95% of people within finance and the family office community do not have. Do not have. I am living and breathing this and doing it and building every day. I want to be of value and I want to help you. And I want you to get access to my books, which are exclusively only for my members. And the same with August 12th and 13th, all up on my website, my AI masterclass. I appreciate you. Feel free to reach out. You can even email angelo@angelorobles.com. Text me if you want, 203-570-2898. Information about membership, the masterclass, the continuity index. It's all up at angelorobles.com. You know what to do. I look forward to potentially seeing you in 2 weeks in August in New York at the masterclass, and I look to change your life there. Thank you all so much.